They prayed for a miracle to bring him back. But who was actually listening? They prayed, they wept, and they got their miracle. But not every answered prayer comes from heaven. Well, hey there, my little darklings, and welcome back, or welcome to Deadtime Stories. I'm Skitty Kitty, your patron saint of tales born from blood, bone, and a prayer gone sideways. And tonight, we've got one that starts with a boy, a frozen creek, and a miracle folks were too quick to celebrate. Because sometimes what comes back isn't what you lost, and sometimes it brings something else with it. So settle on in, snuggle up, and get skitty with me. It's story time. And this is Mr. Blinks. They said the cold saved him. Said it was shaky relief, with two wide smiles stretched over bruised hearts. Said it in whispers at the church potluck, in between casseroles and cling-wrapped pound cake. If it had been summer, well, he'd be gone, poor thing. 30 minutes, that's what I heard, 30 minutes. His mama was screaming so loud you could hear her all the way up on Mill Pond Road. The boy's name was Micah, 8 years old, sweet, quiet, the kind of kid who said, "Yes, ma'am," and still held hands with his mom in the grocery store. That morning he'd gone out early to play by the creek while it was still iced over, bundled up in a blue coat 2 sizes too big and a hat with bare ears on it. There was no splash, no scream, just a neighbor's dog barking and a single mitten stuck to the edge of a cracked ice shelf. By the time they pulled him out, he was blue. Not bruised blue, the color of lake ice under moonlight. His chest was still, his mouth hung open, slack, still. The EMTs worked fast, doing everything they could while racing him down the road to County General. Once there, they wrapped him in warming blankets, pumped warm fluids into him, and whispered hope between every beep and monitor blink. There was talk later of machines that could warm you from the inside out, a kind of second chance no one really understood, just prayed for. Micah came back after almost 30 minutes. He didn't cry, didn't gasp. His eyes opened slowly, like someone waking up in the wrong world. He blinked, turned his head towards his mom, and smiled. Finally hers again. The weeks after were quiet. Micah came home with a scar on his chin and a warning to stay out of the creek. The doctor said he'd need therapy, maybe a neuro eval, but he was speaking in full sentences. Eating, sleeping, seemed fine mostly, but fine felt like a ghost of a word. He didn't hum when he colored anymore, didn't cry when he scraped his knees, didn't laugh when his baby sister ran around in nothing but a diaper and fairy wings. He watched now. That's what unnerved Tessa the most. He just watched. The drawings came next. At first they were harmless, crayon doodles of trucks and trees and a black cat with green eyes. But then came the picture of a man with no face standing outside Micah's window. Then a fire and bodies. Then something that looked like it had horns crouched behind a Sunday school teacher. He's just expressing feelings, the therapist said. He's working through trauma, his daddy repeated like a prayer. But Tessa kept finding the drawings in strange places. Under her pillow, in the silverware drawer, one inside the freezer. They didn't say anything about them aloud. Didn't want to speak whatever this was into being. Then came the shadows. Not the normal ones, the kind that shift with the headlights through the curtains or stretch when the ceiling fan's spinning just right. These were different. Slower, thicker, a little too still. Micah didn't seem bothered by them. If anything, he looked almost expectant, like he was waiting on someone. Tessa caught him talking to the corner once, whispering, "Nah, I like him. He's funny." She peeked in from the hallway, already halfway to scolding, but stopped when she saw the smile on his face. It didn't look like a child's smile. It looked almost sinister. The next morning there was a new drawing on the fridge. A tall, spindly shape with sharp elbows and long fingers. Its eyes were drawn with a heavy black crayon. No pupils, just solid dark. The name written underneath in Micah's childish scrawl, Mr. Blinks. Tessa pulled it down with a shudder. "You've been watching too many scary shows," she muttered, stuffing it into the trash under the coffee grounds. Micah just shrugged. "He doesn't mind. He says he likes the name." Alarion had been called to worse places. Corrupted priests, dying kingdoms, children soaked in fear. But this boy, he wasn't afraid, not even curious, just open, empty, like a room with the windows up and the door left ajar, a vacancy. That's what the prayers had sounded like, pleading in perfect pitch. 1,000 desperate needles piercing the veil, opening a crack just wide enough for Alarion to slip through. He had expected fear, certainly not acceptance. He manifested first in dreams, softly, just a glint of claw behind the door, a shape on the ceiling. He whispered temptation, offered secrets and games and dark delights. But Micah didn't flinch. He smiled. "You blink too much when you talk," the boy said in a dream. "I'm going to call you Mr. Blinks." The demon didn't respond at first. Names were dangerous. Names gave form, gave power. But the boy didn't ask. He just turned over and muttered, "You're mine now, Mr. Blinks," and fell asleep. The drawings got worse. Not more violent, more specific. One showed a man in a tattered robe, kneeling in fire, his mouth open in a scream, his skin flaking like old paper. Another showed a boy, dark-haired, thin, running from a village with blood on his hands. Alarion stared at them in the quiet of Micah's room. These weren't visions, weren't fantasies. They were memories. His own.
"How do you know these things?"
he demanded one night, voice thick as tar. Micah looked up from his sketchbook and said, "I just drew what he showed me." He pointed towards the closet. It took everything Alarion had not to retreat, not to scatter into ash and vanish through the nearest mirror, because something else was in that room. Something darker, something older than him. Something watching both of them. And the boy didn't even blink. It started small. "Make the teacher forget my homework," Micah whispered one night, sitting cross-legged on the bed. "Just for tomorrow." Alarion didn't even question it. It wasn't a command, it was a test. A flick of shadow, a nudge in the back of a human mind, and poof! Mrs. Lanning's lesson plan fluttered out of her hands and into a puddle on her way inside. The boy smiled when he heard, drew a picture of it, stick figures, a frown face, a cartoonish puddle of ink with a bloop next to it. The next night it was, "Make Dad stop yelling at Mom." The demon hesitated, but only for a second, and what a satisfying second it was. Alarion relished that one. Let the man feel watched in his dreams. Let the belt buckle snap right as he reached for it. Let the kitchen lights flicker just enough to make him think twice. He didn't yell again. But then came the drawing. Alarian saw it, stared. It was him. Not his demon form, his first self. The boy, the human boy he once was, when he still had lungs that burned and a name that wasn't cursed. It showed his village, the fire, the altar where he first whispered dark words with shaking hands and too many questions. Micah had drawn it all. In crayon. The boy looked up from the floor where he sat humming. "You had a sister once, didn't you?" Alarian didn't answer. Couldn't. There were no words big enough for that. The next night, the boy didn't ask. He ordered. "The baby cries too much," Micah said one night, voice soft. "She has to go. Now." Alarian's form recoiled, uncertain.
No.
That word rang out like it still had power, but it didn't. "You have to," he said simply. "I drew it already." Micah didn't argue. He just looked down, flipping to a new page in his sketchbook. The crayon in his hand was pale blue this time. The picture was small, a crib, a baby with X's for eyes, and Mr. Blinks standing nearby, watching. "She won't scream," he said. "Just stop her." He held up the page. Alarian's black heart skipped. "You're not in control," Micah said. "You never were." That night, Alarian tried to leave, tried to slip between dimensions, crawl into a mirror, fold into smoke, but something held. The door wouldn't open. The portal blinked shut like an eye that saw too much. And in the corner, behind the closet door, something moved. Not a shape, not a voice, just weight, presence, watching, waiting. Alarian stood in the center of the boy's room, trembling. He'd worn 1,000 forms, shattered minds, whispered kingdoms into ruin, but now he felt something he hadn't since he had shed his mortal skin. Fear. It wasn't Micah, not entirely. The boy's shell still smiled, still whispered commands with sticky fingers and sleep-mussed hair, but something behind his eyes was older. The closet door stood slightly open. It had been like that for days, never wide enough to see inside, never fully shut, just cracked, just enough to breathe. And tonight, it exhaled. The shadows inside the closet weren't still. They rolled like smoke underwater, dense and wet, thick with intent. A sound filled the room, low and rhythmic, not growling, chewing. And then it spoke.
You should have known, Alarian.
It wasn't a voice. Not really. It was the sound of dirt being shoveled, the creak of an old gate, the moan of a dying animal.
This one is mine.
Alarian stumbled back, clawed hands raised, eyes wide.
He called me. He summoned. No.
The shadows burst forward. From the closet came a form so massive it bent the walls around it. Not flesh, not shadow, something in between. Something made of roots and rot and memory. Its shape shifted with every blink. Horns, hands, gaping mouths, a crown made of children's teeth. It filled the room without entering it, like it had always been there. Micah turned his head slowly on the pillow. His eyes were open, but they weren't Micah's. They were slitted, cat-like, ancient, patient, and full of disgust.
What are you doing, Alarian?
The thing inside the boy whispered.
This is my playground.
The demon collapsed to his knees.
I didn't know. I didn't. You tried to take my vessel.
The shadows thickened. Micah's voice came from every wall.
So now you live in one.
Alarian screamed as the world inverted. His body folded, twisted, burned, but not in fire. It was memory that seared him, every mistake, every soul, every betrayal. And then he felt flesh. Human flesh. Rotting, bloated, eyes already gone. A corpse. Not allowed to die, not allowed to escape. He was sealed inside. The bones didn't fit, the mouth didn't close, the skin peeled in strips that wouldn't fall. But he was aware. He was very aware. The body they put him in was wrong. It stank of rot and mud and moldy Sunday suits. The mouth hung slack, the jaw dislocated. One eye socket was empty, the other wept black tears. The lungs didn't breathe, but he could feel them collapsed, cold, empty. He couldn't move. He couldn't scream, but he could watch. From inside the meat shell of Micah's long-dead great-uncle, buried 2 years and brought back up like a marionette, the demon Alarian was trapped, pinned to the soul-soaked walls of a child's reality. He tried to claw his way out, but his fingers only twitched under wet, split nails. Tried to howl, but the only sound was the slow dribble of decay down the corpse's throat. Every second was pain, not torture, worse, helplessness. Micah sat on his floor, surrounded by crayons. Not just red and black now, there were new colors, ones that didn't exist in any box, sickly shades that shimmered wrong. Hues that seemed to crawl if you looked too long. He was humming. The nursery down the hall was quiet. Too quiet. The crib had been donated. The walls painted over. The baby monitor buried in a drawer with the rest of the things that hurt too much to see. They said it was Sid's. They held the funeral in a small white chapel and whispered about grief and healing and God's plan. But beneath the cold earth, where the soil was thick and the coffin was starting to leak, a corpse twitched. Its chest didn't rise, its eyes didn't open, but deep inside that rotting, nailed-shut shell, something was still awake. Alarian. The demon who once ruined kingdoms, now entombed in meat and bone, forced to feel everything as it decayed. Couldn't claw his way out. He couldn't scream. He could only watch as the earth pressed tighter, as bugs found their way in, and the weight of his punishment settled fully into place. Micah just sat on his floor drawing. His mother stirred soup in the kitchen, her prayers long since silenced. His father sat on the porch, staring out at nothing. Crayons rolled across the floor like bones. Drawings covering the walls, hundreds of them, some crumpled, some pinned with rusty nails, all of them full of screaming mouths, clawed hands, demons with names no one should ever say. Micah dipped a stubby green crayon into the palm of his hand, where a small, careful cut bled slow and steady. Gotta make the colors real. He smiled and began again. Let's draw another friend. Well, it looks like the fridge is full of warnings now, and Micah's still drawing them up. If you've got a nightmare of your own to add to the gallery, we feature listener stories every Friday. So break out your crayons and send one in, and maybe we'll bring yours to life next. Sweet dreams if you can find them. Stay twitchy, y'all. See you next time.